I've got two half-formed ideas in my head right now, and I'm not at all sure I can find a way to put them together coherently. So I thought I'd have a go, because they're kind of bugging me a bit, really, I suppose. And because they orient around a similar image, or they have a metaphor, if you like, which draws them together. The first is to do with a book by Reuven, Tsur, and I'm not sure if I got that pronunciation right, called On the Shores of Nothingness. Reuven Tsur, I think he invented the term cognitive poetics, actually, which is an approach to literary analysis which uses the tools and the findings of cognitive science. And this particular book, On the Shores of Nothingness, is quite a long analysis of particular kinds of metaphysical writing, religious writings. And what it's a while since I looked at it, actually, but what I think he's trying to uncover there is the sense that those writings, there's a particular genre of writing which uses particular methods, particular linguistic methods, to generate particular cognitive states which simulate the metaphysics, if you like, or the religious attitude, or maybe it is the spiritual, I don't know, state, or something like that, that's implied in the writing. And that's really one of the themes of cognitive poetics itself, really. The idea that certain kinds of writing, or all writing in a sense, through the use of linguistic features, particularly things like metaphor, which I'll perhaps come on to, particularly things like metaphor, non-consciously produce states, simulations, which are appropriate to the kind of text you're looking at. That's the theme of that. And this, as I say, this particular book is On the Shores of Nothingness. And the conceptual metaphor which is partially explored in that is the one that's featured in that title, which is the idea of standing on a shore, on a beach, and looking out into nothingness, into space, or across an ocean towards the horizon, or onto a fog bank. It's that kind of being faced by the void, with all that comes with that, all the narratives around that position, really. And what he's saying is that a lot of the metaphors that you find in religious and metaphysical writings position one on that point. It may not make it overt, although some clearly does. And I think I've spoken a lot before about poems that have to do with a return to the ocean, for example. That's kind of where I'm going with that. But there's lots of other examples where, in order to convey that metaphysic, you non-consciously induce in the reader this feeling that they are standing at a shore looking out over nothing. That's the first image. The related image, and it's just a relationship of image, not a relationship of content, although there may be content relationship, which I'll try and get onto, is something I was writing about this morning in conversation with a fellow YouTuber, which was to do with an interview with Jonathan Miller that was on the TV a few years ago. And it was a conversation about science and pseudoscience at the time. And what Jonathan Miller was saying, he was a kind of responding to some fairly outlandish claims made by this proponent of a pseudoscience, and responding also to some critiques of what you might call normal science. And what Jonathan Miller was saying is that normal science, and the process of normal science over the last 350, 400 years, has been, and it's a kind of bridge building, or a cantilevering exercise. Didn't use the word, I don't think he used the word bridge, maybe he did. But what he was saying is that science proceeds by building a bridge, or building a cantilever out into space. So there's this, again, this sense of standing on a shoreline, perhaps on the shore of a river, but maybe on the shore of an ocean, with your feet firmly planted on the ground, and you plant your empirical data right there, and it's very close to the primary empirical data is very close to having the solidity of one's feet firmly on the ground. If I can if I can say, here is one hand, I'll grant you all the rest. It has that kind of a certainty attached to it. But once you've established that bridgehead, and then you can start cantilevering out into space. So even though the cantilever itself doesn't touch ground at all, it constantly has that relationship to the ground, but also has a relationship to space and the air, and to the kind of hopefulness that there might be an opposite bank that you're arriving at. The opposite bank being some kind of tentative solution, but may not be. It may not be. It may be just more cantilevering out into more space. I suppose the only reason I'm putting those two ideas together is standing on the shores of nothingness that's representative of metaphysical thinking in Reuven Tsur's work, and the bridge building on the shores of nothingness that Jonathan Miller characterizes as one particular mode of scientific development and inquiry, is that they obviously make use of a similar metaphor, but they do different things with that metaphor, I think. One is about the wonderment, and this isn't a criticism at all of metaphysical thinking or religious thinking, but one is absolutely about standing on the shoreline and being in the presence of wonder and awestruck by the void that one is in front of, even if it's a metaphorical void, just that feeling of being confronted by an immensity, and completely indulges in that feeling and values it. Whilst the other, the metaphor that Jonathan Miller spins out with, the cantilever bridge, starts from the same point but does something else with it, and experiences the pleasures of building and the pleasures of extension and the pleasures of launching out into that nothingness, and the pleasures of a kind of communal effort into that, of not just wonder, but wonder and then action, wonder and then the beginnings of a kind of exuberant science, a leap into the void, if you like. Actually, I think a leap into the void is different. If I was going to talk about leaps into the void, I'd have to talk about Yves Klein, and I'd have to talk about Kierkegaard. But I don't want to talk about either of those right now. It's a bridge to nowhere. Come on, folks.